definitely not using that word today, because the artists we're talking about lived 400 years ago. Abstract art had not even been invented. In a time when 400 years ago, there were no cameras. So people like this artist were kept very, very busy taken. But back then, you would have a portrait painted, and you would pay that artist money. And that is how Rembrandt earned his living. Let me introduce you to Rembrandt van Rijn. If you only remember his first name, that's all that's necessary. There have been a few artists through time that for some reason we call them just by their first name. Michelangelo, Renoir, or we only use his last name for Renoir because nobody can ever remember his first name. And then Rembrandt. Van Rijn means by the Rhine River, which is an important river that flows through the country he lived in. We're going to find out what that country was. But if you just remember his first name, Rembrandt, you'll be doing well. Well, boys and girls, let's go back to Halloween. You get a costume, and sometimes it's a costume that needs you to make silly faces. And you can imagine what it's like to make a silly face with a costume, or even, it doesn't even have to be Halloween. Just imagine you standing in front of a mirror making silly faces. We've all done it. Well, he did too. Let me turn off some lights and I'll show you some examples. We're going to leave the back door open so with these side doors, we're okay with the picture. Okay. Well, just to give you a little reminder of what we might look like on Halloween, look at the funny faces on the pumpkins. He made some of these faces when he was drawing his self-portraits. That's a word we're going to use a lot today because he did a lot of self-portraits. It was a way of practicing his art so that he would be a better artist when he was hired to do a portrait of someone. Like these portraits. Here is Rembrandt. I think Rembrandt had a sense of humor, don't you think? He wasn't really angry. He wasn't really surprised. He wasn't really laughing. He just pretended to do all of those. He probably was sitting in front of his mirror. I would have loved to have been in the room watching him making these faces as he was drawing himself. And I noticed right away with two of the pictures, the one on this end and the one on this end, one side of the face is dark on both of those self-portraits. Why is that? Yes? Yeah, exactly, shadows. Shadows, sunlight, highlight, oh my, you're going to see that a lot this afternoon. That is one thing that Rembrandt is known for, painting with highlight and shadow. The dark areas make you notice the light areas more. It shows contrast, they're so opposite. I asked that same question a few years ago to I think it was a group of kindergartners or first graders. They were a lot younger than you are. And I'll never forget one of the answers I got. The student raised their hand and said to me, it's because his face was dirty. And it made me laugh, but I'm thinking to that child's mind, his face was dirty. Good answer. So it seemed perfectly reasonable to me, but I've never forgotten that. But you know better. You know that it's because his face was in the shadows. And you will see that not only in his drawings like this, but also in his oil paintings. If here's the United States over here in the corner, and conveniently the American flag is there. If we get on a plane at Los Angeles Airport at LAX and cross the Atlantic Ocean, we get to the continent of Europe, which has many countries, of course. I didn't mean to tell you that. Last time we were together, we were in Spain with the artwork of Juan Miró. But if we go a little farther north in Europe, we get to the small country called officially the Netherlands. It's right there by the North Sea, which is part of the Atlantic Ocean. But for such a small country, it sure has a lot of words that go with it. Most people, when they talk about that country, they don't use the long word, the official word, they use this one, which is Holland, yes. Most people say, oh, I'm going to go visit Holland this springtime to go see the tulips bloom. They're famous for their tulips. But if you are from that country, you are referred to as Dutch, and the language you speak is also Dutch. So Rembrandt was a Dutch painter who spoke Dutch, who lived in Holland, otherwise officially known as the Netherlands. And I could put, instead of Rembrandt's name, I could put my grandfather, except he wasn't a painter, that's the only thing that's different. My grandfather, my father's father, was from the Netherlands who spoke Dutch. I never met him, unfortunately. He died when I was very, very young, and he was in Holland and I was in the States. So I never got to meet him, but I would have liked to, and I would have enjoyed hearing him speak Dutch. So this is the country he's from. He was born in the town of Leyden. The name is not on the map. It's a little bit over in this area. Amsterdam is the largest city in Holland, and that becomes an important place for Rembrandt, as you're going to find out. If you ever are lucky enough to visit the beautiful country of Holland, one thing you'll notice is these things. What are they? Windmills, that's right. For centuries, people have been harnessing the power of wind to make things work, to make machinery work. We're still doing that. If you drive to Palm Springs, you'll see those dozens and dozens of wind turbines. And what are they making? Electricity, that's right. So we're still using the power of wind, utilizing the energy created by the wind to make things work. In this case, we're making electricity. Back then, the windmills were used to pump water off the land. You know, if you're a type of traveler that likes to go to countries with mountains, don't go to Holland, because you're not going to see any. It's a very flat country, and it's right there at sea level, and they do have problems with flooding. So for a long time, they've used these windmills with machinery inside to pump the water off the land for their farmland especially. But there's another use for these windmills, and that is this. Oh, by the way, you see the beautiful tulips? Holland is the largest producer of tulip bulbs in the world, and of course they come in many, many colors. Milling grains, that's where the name windmill comes from. It's taking grains like this, like wheat and oat and barley, and grinding it in machinery that would have been inside the windmill that would operate thanks to the wind outside making the blades turn, connected to the machinery inside, grinding the grains into flour. And of course you would buy that flour and turn it into yummy things like bread and cakes and cookies and whatnot. His father was a miller. He owned 2 windmills, as a matter of fact. That's, you know, if you know anybody with the last name of Miller, that's where the name originally comes from people who would mill grains into flour. I guess it's no surprise then that Rembrandt did this drawing of one of his father's windmills. And even in this windmill drawing, we can see a little bit of contrast between the highlight and shadow. You know, the left side of the windmill is in the shadows, and this side is a little bit lighter. So the sun is over here in the sky, obviously, shining down on this part. When these windmills were first built centuries ago, the people who owned them would actually live in them. But we know that Rembrandt's family did not live in their 2 windmills. They had a separate house. Now, if you were the son of a